So let's take a look at the difference between Windows 7 and Windows 8. One of the single best or biggest success of Microsoft was actually the launching and sales of the volume Windows 7. According to the most recent research, it says that Windows 7 has exceeded the 400 million mark in sales, which means that the number on average has been approximately 7 copies of Windows sold every second. As the release of Windows 8 on October 26, 2012, many people, both end users and professionals, were very anxious and waiting and wondering how would the Windows version match up to Windows 7, or would it suffer a failure such as Windows Vista. But let's take a look. Here we have our Windows 7 machine open. Let's open our Windows 8 machine. If you go ahead and notice the difference between the Windows 8 and the Windows 7 already, when the Windows 7 machine starts up, we get to our home screen or we get to our login screen. When Windows 8 comes up, we get the date and we get the time. Once we click to slide this here on up, and then we log on to our actual machine. Let's see if I can remember my password here. And if you notice, we have to actually use our Windows username and password like we were using our Windows email as such, or Windows Live email. If you take a look, the differences in the interface is what's most commonly found when first looking at Windows XP from Windows 7. And in Windows 7, we found many of the basic features that were found in the previous versions that had been released. The most common feature was the Windows Family Start button found in the lower left-hand corner of the screen. Another hallmark of Windows has always been the various icons that are arranged around the screen, and usually a double click to get to launch the actual program. But if we were to look with Windows 8, its new Metro interface, both of these features have been removed and actually replaced, and there instead we have live tiles that will be placed around the screen, which you can customize according to the user's preferences. So look here, let's take a look at the tiles that I have currently here. These are all by default the tiles that were actually automatically on to my system. I didn't actually change anything. But if you would notice, these tiles actually resemble our phone OSs or smartphones, most mobile devices, even our tablets, Windows tablets that we would actually use. And to get to one of the things that we would actually want, we would actually have to click on that tile with a single touch, and it would actually bring up whatever we were actually looking for to actually use. And if you switch over here to the side just a little bit, you actually get another window where you can get your settings. It can tell you your device, and then we have our start that takes us back to the front tile. Instead of having our start menu or an X to close out the actual application. For example, let's go back to Windows 7 and let's look at our Internet Explorer. If you look there, the way to get out our Internet Explorer here in Windows 7 is to close the nice little X, and it takes us back to our desktop. One thing that's different between Windows 7 and Windows XP also is the touchscreen support. Windows 8 is obviously geared quite a bit to touchscreen devices. If you notice the tiles will allow you to make up the interface that you would want to use, and this can be used on a desktop or a laptop. But most of the computers now, new devices that are coming out with Windows 8 are coming out as such as tablets that can be used as laptops and tablets. Alright, another noteworthy difference between Windows 7 and Windows 8 is the Task Manager. Windows 7 apparently the last version that will use the classical Task Manager. Windows 8 Task Manager isn't the same. It allows you to have a little bit more easier access and simpler and easier to use. Alright, we still would get to the actual Task Manager by logging our Control-Alt-Delete. That would still take us to our Task Manager in Windows 8 as it did in Windows 7. But if you click on Task Manager, if you notice, now we just actually see what's currently running on the system, the current task or the current process. And any of these items can be killed by a simple click of the button, thus freeing up any system resources that we actually need. As if we click over here to Windows 7, we'll see that we have all these different tabs in our Task Manager. But over here, we just have our basic programs that are actually running, and then you actually get a little icon over here. We don't get any icons, we just get the words of what that actual event is or what we're trying to do. And if you notice, now we're back to our actual Windows desktop, but as you can tell, there's still not a start button as you would see in the other operating systems. You don't see that start button in Windows 8. Now let's take a look at our new Windows Explorer. If you go over here and get into Windows Explorer for Windows 7, let's check out the difference. Okay, here in the actual Windows 8, we now have the ribbon feature just like you would in Office, Microsoft Office or Word, Excel, any of those specific applications. We actually have that ribbon feature here in Windows 8 now. You don't see that feature or the ability to have that feature in Windows 7. So Windows XP gives you a totally different look. So when first looking at it, you can really quickly identify. But now we have our red X to close out to get back to where we want to actually go. Alright, so that's Windows 7, the difference between Windows 7 and Windows XP.